Hey, what's up guys? Austin here. So this is going to be the first video in a series of videos I'm going to make on how to record drums. I've gotten a lot of positive comments on my channel about the quality and the sound and the mixing and all that kind of stuff. And I know a lot of you guys are interested in how I do all that. So I'm going to show you everything I do. Now, let me preface this by saying that I'm not a professional recording engineer by any means. I'm really just a drummer that has developed a strong interest in learning how to record myself over the past 5 years or so. And this is kind of aimed at you guys out there that want to learn how to record yourself, maybe do some covers, YouTube videos, track yourself or your band, stuff like that. So this is kind of meant to be a guide on how to do all that. Okay, so in this first episode, it's going to be all about the gear you need to set up a proper recording rig. So let's get started. All right, guys, let's start with the first thing you need, which is arguably the most important and sometimes the hardest to get, and that is a fucking room to record in. Now, I'm lucky enough to have a soundproofed room that's built out inside a garage, and I'm extremely grateful to have this room because I've had lockouts and played in basements and stuff, and this is really kind of like a dream come true. But use whatever you have access to. If you're in your parents' basement, bedroom, if you have a lockout rehearsal space, whatever you have access to is what you got, but you do need some kind of a place where you can play, okay? So that's the first thing you need. Okay, the next thing you need, which is pretty important if you want to record drums, is a drum set. So I have a Pearl Masterworks Maple kit here. I've condensed it down into a 4-piece, which has been working pretty well for the style I play now. So you need some kind of a drum set. It doesn't have to be the best in the world. If you have the funds to get a nice drum set, then by all means go for it. But really, your ability to tune it and your ability to play it well is what's really going to have the biggest impact on the sound of your recordings. So I would focus on that more. But if you can get a nice drum set, then go for it. But you do need some drums to play. Okay, the next thing you're going to need is microphones. Now, according to your budget, you may have to start minimal with like 1 or 2 mics, but I think the ultimate goal is to at least have 2 overhead mics and an individual mic for every part of the kit. So I'm using 7 mics in total to record my kit, mostly from the Audix DP7 mic bundle, which I did a review on not too long ago. So if you want to check that out, I'll put it over there. For the overheads, you want to stick to condenser microphones. You got pencil condensers, you got large diaphragm condensers. You can even use ribbon mics. I would just stay away from using dynamic microphones as overheads. You technically can use it, but it's not ideal. For the snare, stick to the standard ones, Shure SM57s. I use the Audix i5. I've also seen people use the Shure SM7B sometimes. So just stick to the standard ones for that. You should be good. For the toms, I use the Audix D2 and the D4. I like the smaller size microphones that can clamp onto the side of the drum. It kind of helps to cut down on using microphone stands for each mic, and it kind of keeps the mic out of the way so you don't hit them all the time when you're playing. So I prefer smaller microphones that can clamp onto the drum. So I know Sennheiser also makes some like small clamp-ons, so do some research on that. For the kick, I use the Audix D6. It's pretty modern, it's punchy, it's got some attack to it. If you want something a little more neutral, maybe like an AKG D112 is a popular option. So, do some research. You're going to see the same kind of mics come up as like standards for everything. So keep it simple, keep it within your budget. Microphone bundles are a good way to save some money and kind of cover all your bases. You can piece together microphones from scratch, but that could get expensive. But if you know what you're doing, you can do it. So get you some microphones. Okay, the next thing you're going to need is microphone cables. So I use these guys right here. These are by GLS Audio. You can find a 6-pack of these for $70 on Amazon, which is a pretty good deal. And they're multicolored, which is more convenient than you might imagine. When you're recording drums, you got a lot of different microphones in weird places. And if you need to follow the line back to your interface to see what input it's going to, if all the cables are the same color, if they're all black, you can't really tell like what's what. So you got to like follow the line with your hand. But with multicolored cables, you can just look at the color and see exactly which input it's going to. So Multicolored cables, GLS Audio on Amazon, $70. I've had no complaints with them. They've been solid, and I highly recommend them. So pick you up some microphone cables. All right, cool. So now we get to the fun stuff, which is the audio gear. So the one thing that you're definitely going to need is an audio interface. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically the hub for all of the audio routing in your studio. So it's the thing that gets the sound from your microphones into your computer and the audio from the computer back out to the speakers in your headphones. So it's a very important thing to get. Now there's lots of different interfaces out there. For drummers, I recommend getting an 8-channel audio interface if you can, so that way you can use multiple microphones to record a full drum set. If you want to do the minimal miking thing, you can maybe get away with a 4-channel interface. It really depends on how you want to do it, but I recommend 8-channel interfaces for most guys out there. The one I have is this guy right here. This is the Focusrite Liquid Sapphire 56. It's an 8-channel interface with built-in preamps on each channel, which means that I can record 8 microphones at one time with this thing right here, and I'd be good to go. So for most of you guys out there, that's what I would recommend starting with. I'll briefly go over the other stuff in my rack here. None of this is really necessary to start with, but I'll just let you know what it is. This is the Octopre MK2 Dynamic. It's an 8-channel microphone preamplifier that connects to the Liquid Sapphire 56 with an ADAT cable in the back. And when these two units are linked together, it expands my channel count to 16. So I can record 16 microphones at one time with these two units. So that's why I got that guy. This is the ISA 428 preamp. This is getting into the world of high-end preamps, and it's really nice to have, but it's really not necessary to start with. But I'm using it to replace the 4 preamps on the last 4 channels of the Sapphire. So there are some advantages to having a preamp like this, but again, it's not really necessary to start with, okay? This is a headphone amp, so I use this to expand the amount of headphones I can use at once because the interface only has 2 headphone outputs. But if I'm recording a band and more than 2 people want to hear what's going on, then I need to have a headphone amp, so that's why I got that guy. And this unit at the bottom is the ART P16 XLR patch bay. So what this does is allows me to connect all of my microphones directly to the front of the rack here, real nice and convenient, instead of having to go into the mess of cables in the back of the rack. It's a nightmare back there. So this is really just kind of a convenience accessory, but it is pretty awesome. So I recommend getting one of these if you're going to put a rack together. But that's basically all the things that I use in my rack. But the one thing you definitely need is an audio interface, preferably 8 channels if you can get it, okay? Okay, now the next thing you definitely need is a computer. You don't need the best computer in the world. You don't need the $10,000 Mac Pro, but I would recommend getting as good of a computer as you can. PC versus Mac doesn't really matter. They're both going to get you to the same endpoint. I'm personally an Apple guy, have been for a really long time. I'm using a 27-inch iMac now, and the reason I got that is because I'm doing so much video work now that I need it to handle Final Cut. I was just using a MacBook Pro, and it was working really well for recording audio, but it was starting to stumble with video work, so that's why I got this guy. But, you know, just get as good of a computer as you can. Some general recommendations, you know, quad-core processor, if you can get it. An SSD is really nice. I'll never go back to a hard drive inside a computer ever again. So if you can get an SSD, get an SSD. At least 8 gigs of RAM, if not 16 or 32. I got 32 in this guy. Did have 16 gigs on the MacBook Pro. So get as much RAM as you can. And just learn how to optimize your computer to keep it as clean and fast as possible so all of your recording sessions are really smooth, okay? But you do need a computer. Okay, the next thing you need is a DAW, which stands for Digital Audio Workstation. Now, if you follow my channel, you know that I use Logic Pro 10 pretty much exclusively now. In the past, I have used Pro Tools, and I understand why it's the industry standard, but it just doesn't really work for me anymore. But it is a nice DAW. I've used Cubase in the past. I've never tried Persona Studio One, but a lot of people seem to like it. It's getting a lot of good reviews, so maybe check that out. Reaper is another one if you want to maybe save some money. So there's lots of different DAWs out there. Download some trials, see which ones work for you. They're all going to do the same things, just in slightly different ways, but they'll all get you to the same endpoint. Just, experiment around with them and stick to what you can afford and what you feel most comfortable with. But you do need some sort of a DAW. Okay, the last two things I want to talk about technically aren't necessary, but to me, they pretty much are. The first one is an external hard drive. When you're recording 8 microphones at one time and you're doing take after take, you don't want to record all of that data to the internal drive of your computer. Get an external hard drive, run your session off of there. Really, the only things you should have installed on your internal drive are your applications, maybe some samples, and your virtual instruments for the DAW. But keep your computer as clean as possible and run all of your sessions from external hard drives. I personally just use a G Drive Mini 7200 RPM 1 terabyte drive, and it's been working pretty well for recording audio. If you can get an SSD, go for an SSD, but get something that's fast enough to handle audio recording, but large enough to where you can, do a lot of sessions without running out of space. But you do need an external hard drive, okay? Okay, the last things you need, which again, technically aren't necessary, but they basically are, and that is studio monitors. Whenever you record audio and you want to go back and listen to what you did, you don't want to do it from the built-in speakers on your computer. You technically can, but nobody recommends you do that. You want to get you some nice studio monitors so you can hear some of the low end from the drums, the phase relationships, and whenever you get to the mixing phase, you can have some nice neutral speakers to make accurate mix decisions with, okay? So get you some studio monitors. I just use the Yamaha HS50Ms. I got them on eBay for like $300. So you don't have to get the best monitors in the world. Just get some regular ones and just learn how they translate to the outer world. So that's the most important thing. But get you some monitors, hook them up to your interface. You should be good to go. All right, cool. So hopefully that gives you guys a better idea of all the gear and the things you need to truly put together like a nice home recording studio for drumming. If this all seems overwhelming and expensive, like believe me, I get that. You don't have to buy all this stuff at one time. I've been doing this for a long time. Plan out your purchases, do a lot of research, get one thing at a time. Make sure that everything you buy is going to work together as a cohesive unit. And eventually, one day you'll wake up and you'll have a studio that you can record drums in. So that's the goal. If you really want it, plan it out, be smart about it, find some good deals, and make it happen. Okay? So that's going to do it for part 1. In part 2, we're going to look at mic placements. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for that one, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.